Hey, what's going on? Jordan Harris, your favorite host in the entire world. So, today I want to talk about my least favorite team in all of college football, Florida State Seminoles. So, I want to give just an even, I want to have an even conversation and just talk about my honest thoughts on Florida State this year, and then we'll talk a little bit about last year. So, let's go ahead and start with last year's conversation. So I know a lot of people were hyped up on Florida State because of their record. Some people were disappointed, frustrated, upset because they didn't get into the playoff. My perspective was a little different. I watched Florida State play almost every game last year. I just was not very impressed with that team. I wasn't. And I mentioned this in some of my videos last year. I watched teams like Georgia. I watched teams like Alabama. I watched teams like Washington. I watched teams like Texas, and it was pretty obvious to me that the talent level, the execution, the discipline, it seemed like those teams were on a different level than Florida State. Just being honest with you, and I said the exact same thing last year. When I looked at last year's team, people were pumping up Jordan Travis. They really wanted to make him into like a Tim Tebow-esque figure, like this savior or something, this guy who does everything right on and off the field. But I watched games where I saw Jordan Travis melt down and throw the ball right into the chest of the defense 2 or 3 plays in a row. I saw him do that. So I'm like, Jordan Travis is not this guy that they're making him out to be. I watched players like Johnny Wilson, the receiver, was really not impressed with him at all. I don't think he'll have much of an NFL career at all. He dropped a lot of balls, couldn't get off of press on defensive press, couldn't get off of that. He's just too tall, too lean, didn't have enough strength in his legs. I'm not a big fan of Johnny Wilson at all. Um, I do think their running back was exceptional. And then I also think that Keon Coleman was one of the best receivers in college football, if not the best. I'm big on Keon Coleman. Just to tell you, I'm not being a homer because I like the Hurricanes. I'm not just hating everything Florida State does. I'm just being honest with you. I thought Jordan Travis was overrated. Thought Johnny Wilson was overrated. I can't think of his name, the running back. I thought he was pretty good. Trey Burton, maybe? I thought he was pretty good. And I thought Keon Coleman was really good. The rest of the team, I thought they had a pretty good pass rush. I thought their pass blocking was decent. I thought their run blocking was pretty good. I do think they were the best team in the ACC. I think that. But whenever it was them versus the upper echelon elite teams like Alabama, Georgia, I don't think they really could have competed, especially if their starting quarterback was gone. So that's that last year. So let's focus on this year's team. So if I didn't think last year's team was really good, if I didn't think last year's team was elite, and now they're bringing in players like DJU for Jordan Travis, and then the receiving core that they have right now, and then a lot of the pass rushers they had disappeared, they're gone. You can probably imagine my thoughts on this year's team. And this is going into the season. This is not a thought that I have after Georgia Tech. This is me thinking before the season. I just don't think Florida State is very good. I think they were highly overrated at the beginning of this season. Highly overrated. People were acting shocked about what happened with the Georgia Tech game. I was not shocked. I wasn't surprised. I didn't expect them to lose, but to me it was more like a 50-50 proposition. Why? Because I knew that the receiving core, I knew that their top two receivers was gone. I knew that they didn't bring in crazy high transfers, crazy high recruits who were going to start from day one and do some really impressive things. So I'm like, the receivers probably won't be able to get open. Another thing, I don't think DJU is very good. I just don't think so. I know a lot of people saw him play at Clemson, which I did. I saw him play at Clemson. I expected him to be really good at Clemson, and he really was not. Then he went to Oregon State, and I expected him to be really good there with a fresh start, and he really was not. And if he was coming to Florida State, and everybody's expecting him to turn the page and just be this awesome football player all of a sudden when he's had multiple years to show you who he is. And as we've heard people say, once somebody show you who they are, you better believe them. kind of reminds me of when we're picking brackets, college basketball. I'm a big uh, Kansas Jayhawk fan because I was born in Wichita, Kansas. Big Jayhawk fan. And we would have this, like, let's say in 2004, we have an issue with defensive rebounding, right? All year we're just getting killed on the boards. For whatever reason, I would say it's March Madness. They can get this rebounding thing figured out, and I picked them to win the whole thing. And then what do you think causes them to lose in the tournament? Every single time, whatever they struggle with during the regular season, it would be the reason why they lost in the tournament. Defensive rebounding. So whenever a team tells you who they are, or whenever a player spells out who they are to you for a whole season or for multiple years in DJU situation, you need to believe that. Don't think all of a sudden when the tournament comes around or all of a sudden when he's playing for your team, he's going to get it figured out. I promise you, he won't and they won't. So I saw what DJU was for the last few years. I saw what he was when he inherited an outstanding Clemson team. I saw what he did there. And I'm like, I don't care where you put him. He's not going to be this outstanding player that people are hoping he's going to be at Florida State. So when I saw him doing what he did against Georgia Tech, I was not surprised. It's exactly what I expected. So DJU, he seems like a nice guy, but he is not an outstanding football player. Florida State, their offensive line. Let's talk a little bit more about the Georgia Tech game. Their offensive line struggled like crazy. First half, they struggled. Second half, they struggled. They're not really good offensive line at all. They're just not. Especially, like, if you look at people getting around the edges, they can get there just about any play they want to. So that's kind of scary for Florida State going forward. Offensive line needs some serious work. Their defensive line also needs some serious work. Not really in the pass rushing side of things because for whatever reason, Florida State always finds ridiculously good defensive pass rushers. I don't know how they do it, but they always do. But when it comes to run stopping, they need help. They need a whole lot of help. So I'm not too concerned. I think people were thinking that Florida State was going to be this juggernaut thing. Not even close, especially if you have pass blocking issues, run blocking issues, and you can't stop the run. You got problems. That's automatically going to take you down from an A tier team all the way to maybe a C plus tier just overnight, right? So those are two big concerns. Then we talked a little bit about wide receivers. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everything about Georgia Tech, but I doubt that they have world beaters at wide receiver and world beaters at cornerback. But Florida State could not get open. They couldn't get any kind of separation. So people were killing DJU saying he sucked. I'm like, he really didn't suck. He wasn't throwing the ball to the other team like Van Dyke was doing for the Hurricanes. Let's say Tyler Van Dyke throwing the ball to the other team all day, every day. He wasn't doing that. Maybe he missed a couple guys down the field, overthrowing them here or there. But for the most part, DJU played an average player's game. He's an average player, and he played an average player game. Did he light the board up? No. But when you looked at the field, I'm like, he's not missing people. He's just not, he doesn't have anybody open. So people who are killing DJU, you probably should be leaning towards the wide receivers as well because they couldn't get open. In order for your quarterback to be successful, you got to get some kind of separation, and these wide receivers just couldn't do it. So the quarterback is average. And so far, the wide receivers look very average, very basic. Their offensive line looks average at best, and their defensive line is okay. So, struggling there. All right, I don't think Florida State is a really good team. And then we talk about the Georgia Tech game. I think the thing that people overlook and the thing that people are ignoring is like everybody's looking at that game and they say, oh, Florida State blew it. Florida State tricked it out. Florida State didn't show up. Have you ever stopped to consider that maybe Georgia Tech is pretty decent? They're a pretty good team. And that snuck up on me too. But when I watched the game, I'm like, they're actually pretty good. And if you're like me and you're a Hurricanes fan and you watched Georgia Tech steal a game, the Neal game, when we didn't kneel. You watch them steal a game. The first thing that I thought was, I can't wait for my Hurricanes to play Georgia Tech again, so we can blow them off the field, run the score up, do all that stuff. But then when I watched them play against Florida State, I was like, yeah, that game is not going to be a cakewalk. Georgia Tech is actually pretty good. Like, maybe I should be careful what I'm asking for, because Georgia Tech is, I'm telling you, they're going to beat a lot of people this year. They are not a bad team. So, I don't know why I just went on this tangent about Georgia Tech, but I figured I would do that because people are overlooking them in this whole equation when it comes to Florida State losing. So overall, I don't think Florida State is a very good team this year. If I was going to do a grading scale from F all the way up to A, I would give them maybe a C+. It's kind of where I'm leaning with them. They're playing Boston College next. If Boston College didn't have Bill O'Brien, I would actually pick Boston College to win. I don't bet, I don't gamble, I don't do any of that. I'm not high on Bill O'Brien at all. Not a fan of his, even a little bit. But I do know that they have a quarterback, Castellanos, I think was his last name. I watched him play a couple of games last year, and he gave the defense fits the entire game. He's not real tall, but he can throw the ball pretty well, and he is really quick and really fast. And as soon as the play breaks down, he takes off. So I would not be surprised if Boston College beat Florida State on Monday. I would not be surprised at all. Again, if Bill O'Brien was not the head coach, I actually would tell you right now, Boston College is going to win. I'm just such a non-fan of Bill O'Brien that it's hard for me to pick his teams for anything. So, real quick, just to sum up the whole video, I think Florida State has taken a drastic. Well, I don't think Florida State was a really good team last year. I think that they had an easy schedule. I believe that they beat everybody on their schedule. I believe they are the best team in the ACC, but I don't think they could compare to any of the upper echelon teams. Just don't think so. So I really believe that last year's team was overrated, not nearly as good as people thought they were. This year, I believe they took a significant step back. So they lost Jordan Travis. They brought in DJU. I think that's a downgrade. Not because Jordan Travis is this world beater, but because Jordan Travis could at least shuffle in the pocket, extend plays. DJU is doing none of that. So they got a big decrease there. They also have a big decrease in wide receivers, major decrease in defensive line, major decrease in offensive line. So they've decreased across the board from a team that I don't think was really good in the first place. So that's what I really believe. They lost to Georgia Tech already. I expect them to lose to Boston College, but I'm not just going to jump out the window and say they're going to, because Bill O'Brien's the coach, and I don't trust him for anything. So that's all that I got for you today. Thank you for watching the video. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I truly appreciate it. Take care. God bless. Peace.